Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Vincent Briatore here. Today is Memorial Day, isn't it? Yeah, it's Monday, Memorial Day, so not much going on. Today, I figured I would share a story by popular request. If I can get this mic to stand up properly. Now and then I do stories. I know I have another channel where I do more random stuff, but I figured I'd share this one on this channel. And maybe you guys still subscribe to my other one where I don't always talk about crypto. So anyway, this story goes back to my time in Italy. When I was around 13, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor and had surgery, had to learn how to walk again. I know, right? So the backstory to this, and the future story of this incident in particular, happened around when I was 13. So when I was 13, going to school in Italy, in Rivoli, provincia di Torino, I was, I hated bullies. I was always fighting with bullies. I think when I was in first elementary school, I broke my collarbone fighting with a bully, So anyway, I wasn't overly, I didn't really have that many problems with bullies. No, because I was always, but I was always defending other people. I didn't have a problem scrapping, so I get myself in particular situations. And also because, I was considered the American in Italy. Also, my grandmother had a lot of, she's fairly wealthy, so we lived in a villa. And I was the only kid that lived in a house with a yard and stuff in the entire city. So, or entire school, or whatever you want to call it. Not city, but school. So, this all kind of stuff that at the time I never thought about. I didn't know the dynamic of it. So anyway, when I was 13, there was this bully that was in his last year middle school. I was in my first year middle school. This kid was 17. He had been held back at least 3 times. So maybe once or twice in elementary, then once in middle school at some point. But he was in his last year, third year of middle school. He's a big dude. He looked like an adult. Well, 17, you're almost an adult. But he was a big dude too. I remember, But anyway, he was a really huge bully. Bullied everybody. One day, somehow, I get involved. He targeted me, and then it became something. Every time we saw each other, we kind of got into it. But then there was teachers and stuff that stopped it. So finally, I was tired of getting picked on. I was just like, you know what? Let's do this. Next week, in front al panettiere, in front of the bread maker, before school, we're going to meet and we're going to duke it out. We're just going to solve the situation. So he's like, yeah. And so then, it led up. There was a week of shit talking leading up to this event. I was training, doing everything. And it became a big deal in the school because no one had really challenged him like this. So most people were rooting for me, of course. Everybody was like, let's hope. But anyway, so we we met in front of the bread maker, okay? And let's just say things didn't go as I planned. Last thing I remember is punching the guy, and him actually stopping, looking at me, touching his lip, and then just beating the crap out of me. Or so, that's the thing. I don't remember that. I get a lot of different accounts of what happened, but I don't remember anything. So what happened with me, I just remember being back in my classroom during a music lesson, right? The music teacher was there. And I remember my head hurting like crazy. And, the teacher said, at one point, he's like, well, why don't you call your mother? Maybe you need to go to the hospital or something. So I call my mother, and she doesn't want to get me. She thinks I'm just BSing her. Because, kids, how they are, you don't want to go to school or whatever. So you're like, I'm sick, but you're not really sick. So anyway, I was telling my mother, I'm like, I'm serious. This is serious, Ma. I need to go to the hospital. Got in a fight, this happened. I'm telling you, Ma, it's serious. She didn't believe me. So I go back to class. I'm like, she's not coming. She doesn't believe me. Finally, the kids, I guess, told the teacher what happened, that I got in a fight and everything. So he's like, oh, man, you really need to go to the hospital. So he calls my mother, tells him serious, you need to come get your kid. And so she's like, okay. So she comes, gets me. And I didn't want to go to the hospital or something. I don't think. But it was hurting, excruciating, worst pain ever. My headache was it was crazy. But I didn't want to go. But she's like, oh, no, I can't even pick you up. Now we're going. I'm like, okay, well, let's go. So we go into the emergency room. They did an MRI or something. And then I never left. Just got transferred to other hospitals and had a few different surgeries. So what happened is they found out that I had what is called a cerebral angioma, which is a mass of veins, a vein tumor, a tumor that's growth inside my cervelletto, so the back of your brain, the most delicate part of your brain. It was the size of a baseball. So it was huge. It was like a huge mass. The walls of the tumor had gone very thin, and so any type of insomma, you know what I mean? Like a hit You fall, any type of trauma would cause the vein, the mass to rupture, thus causing, brain damage, ruptures, you got brain bleeding, what do they call that? Like concussion type stuff, insomma, but it's serious. So one of those, if it's bad enough, you just die. So, they were talking about there's different things we need to do. They also say, we don't have to do surgery, but it's not going to last very long. Could be a year, could be less. The slightest point, it could be even unprovoked. At one point, it's so delicate, like I said, that sooner or later in my life, the thing's going to rupture on its own, and I'm just going to die because it's way too big, this mess. So they have to take it out. Obviously, I hated being in this hospital. I was transferred to Torino, to the Children's Hospital. I just hated it. So the first thing they end up planning to do, plus, just the IVs, all this shit constantly messing with you. Oh, it was an inferno, proprio. It was torture. So then they decide, here's what we're going to do. We got this thing, it's called I don't remember this thing. They go through your artery in your leg, and they go up your artery and then release a liquid that acts with the MRI to show up. It's an ink that shows up on the MRIs. There's a name for it. I used to know the name. Somebody that works in medicine, obviously, will know what I'm talking about. So anyway, we say, okay, I'm going to do that. We do it. And then they decide, okay, here's what we're going to do. So they get a better view of this tumor, right? Because it shows the vascular, everything, the veins, you see it in 3D, it's better or whatever. So they said, okay, we have this super glue. And this first surgery they did was like $100,000. They're like, again, we're going to go through the groin. We're going to go all the way up to his head or whatever. And we're going to release this glue in a certain spots in this tumor so that it'll block the flow of blood, thus shrink the tumor to make it acceptable for surgery. Because it was so big, it was a very dangerous surgery. Just a location, they're like, we need to do something else to shrink it before we try to do surgery. So they do the surgery, and I did not like this because this stuff here is very painful. They say that they deadened it, but it's not pleasant. But anyway, so they do the surgery, and I was actually awake for it. Was I awake? No, maybe they did put me to sleep for this. I don't quite remember. But I know that I must have fallen asleep because I remember the next thing I remember waking up. I'm like, oh. And I go to scratch my nose with my left hand, and my arm goes like that, just slams across my face. And I pick her up again, and it's just going all over the place. I had lost complete control and coordination of anything on my left side of my body. Had to learn how to walk again. I couldn't even swallow properly. That's all my left side of my body was all messed up. What had happened is this glue didn't drop where it was supposed to, got through, and ended up somewhere else in my brain. I know. So they're like, oh, I guess, so then they're talking. There's a neurosurgeon. They're still in talks. It takes me weeks, months to learn how to walk in. And that was extremely stressful, learning, because there was no physical therapy. It was kind of like figure it out. I had to do my exercises on my own, walk around, and learn how to walk again. And I couldn't walk. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't swallow. It was just hell. I'm really glad that at this point, a lot of it I don't remember. I just remember it being incredibly, incredibly stressful. Even years later, there was a walk. My walk wasn't quite normal. You could tell from my walk that something was wrong. Now you can't. But in my teenage years, early teenage years, for a long time, there was like a pep. Or at least I felt that way. Because you had to learn again. So anyway, they finally decide to do a surgery that is more invasive. They're just going to cut open and take it all out. And it's very dangerous, and I wasn't really informed of the danger that it was. My mother alluded to it. She's like, it's, there's a decent chance it could happen. Something could happen. There's a majority of chances what something would happen. There would be some permanent brain damage, something, because they removed this whole thing. So there's a big chance. But they did the surgery. It was 23 hours. And it was such a massive surgery, they actually recorded it. But I never got to see it. It would have been interesting to see. I don't think they even made it because, God knows what they were doing to me for 23 hours under the knife. But anyway, I have a big-ass scar now on the back of my head. Some videos, I think one video where I was doing the dance, you can kind of tell. I can try to show you guys. I don't know if you can tell, but, it goes all the way up. It's like, 30 stitches all the way up. It's a big scar if I have short hair. It doesn't look good, that's for sure. So anyway, I did the surgery. Then, a few weeks after they finally released me, And, I stayed at home for a while, kept working on walking and all that stuff, and then got back in school. For a long time, I had horrible migraines. So the surgery was a success. They removed it, and, everything was pretty much the same. So pretty alarming that glue thing got away, but, it is what it is. So, for a long time, like I said, I was having horrible headaches, horrible migraines. It was rough. It was rough getting back adjusted, going back to school, all this stuff. It was a lot going on. And then getting back, and I got back in. Before I did a lot of martial arts and stuff, and then when that happened, I just got back into weightlifting and stuff. I didn't get back, and I should have got back. And then until I was like 17, I think I started doing kickboxing again. But anyway, my passion up to that point, my big plan was that I wanted to go in the military. It was my huge passion. I read Tom Clancy's Marines, and I would watch war movies, and that was like my biggest aspiration, that one day I wanted to go in the military. Hopefully the U.S. military was my big plan. So I'd run every day, I would train, all this stuff. And this happening, that was the biggest thing. It was like I felt like a part of my life was done, because I would never be able to get back in the military. I would never be able to do it. I'm missing half my brain. Half my brain had to learn how to walk again. And MEPS, if you have a broken bone, sometimes they'll reject you. That's why normally people just say, oh no, I've never broken a bone. So anyway, I decide that I'm just going to go for it. I start training again. I start running. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to try. Because the surgery happened in Italy. So technically there weren't medical records of it in the U.S. Everybody thought I was crazy. Like, dude, you got a big ass scar on the back of your head. Everybody can see it. Even Stevie can see you have a scar on the back. How are you going to get in the military? I'm like, I don't care. To the point where I left and went to the U.S. when I was 17. I went and enrolled in the military. I kept the whole thing secret. I went with a little bit longer hair. And somehow I managed to get through MEPS. I joined the army. I did. It was insane because there was a ton of people. People don't realize this, but not everybody get in the military. A lot of people get rejected. A little bit of asthma, some broken bones, color blindness, anything that you may have, they kick out a lot of people, can't get in. And so there's a lot of people when I went to MEPS that didn't get in for small stuff. And I was like, wow, I just really lucked out that they're so, I don't know, they do things a certain way. Okay, so they're not looking all over your body for scars, especially in your hair. They're not looking. They do exams. They do blood work. They check your medical records. They look at you. They do standard tests. And if you pass all those, you're good. Once I got in basic, obviously they shave your head. So all the drill sergeants, the COs, everybody's like, what the hell's wrong with you? It looks like a butchering, this huge scar. Especially if my head is completely shaved. I mean, it's a big scar. And I used to tell them I dived in water that was too shallow. And stupid stuff like that, And they never said anything because at that point, it's not their problem. And if you know about the military, people tend to really stay in their lane and do what they're told. And that worked in my favor, okay? They're like, he passed MEPS, whatever. As long as I'm not showing any physical signs of impairment and I pass MEPS, they don't care. I'm telling you. So... so that was my big dream, and I made it. It was a big satisfaction to get through MEPS and everything. Unfortunately, military didn't turn out to really suit me that well. I wasn't really happy in it. I was going to do a career of it, but I didn't do a career of it. It just wasn't me. It wasn't what I expected it to be. I don't like being bossed around. I don't like bullies, right? So, hey, it is what it is. It was a good experience, though. Made me who I am today. I'm glad I joined, but it's just not something that, I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It's not. So that was the big story. So nowadays, I don't really think about that kind of stuff a lot. I don't really tell people a lot about it. And the fact that it's in the back of my head, I don't really see it a lot. But I do get asked, especially with short hair, people ask what happened to me. And a lot of times I just make up stuff. Or, I'll just say, I was injured in the military. But I won't go in details that I also had an injury when I was young, a brain tumor and all that stuff. Because it's just not something I want to get into. But it has made me who I am today. I don't know. I think some people have really way worse stories. I don't think that this is some sort of story where you're like, you know what? You proved yourself. You're so brave. It's like, no, I did what anybody would do. Survive. I didn't have a choice. I just survived. I did the best that I could, and I overcame those obstacles because overcoming them was all I could do. Okay, what was my only option was jumping out the window. Suicide. It was the whole thing was a very tough process, but I made it through. and I had a lot of determination. I think one thing my parents raised me where, they did not have a lot of compassion in the sense that everything happens, it's your responsibility, it's your fault. They didn't baby me. Even during the surgery, like, I never saw my mother cry. Never once. They were strong for me, and that made me want to be strong, and it made me who I am today. And I think that's important. What was my point that I was trying to make? What I'm saying is that I forgot what I was trying to say. I was saying the way my parents raised me is a big part of what I am today, and it gave me that determination to believe that anything's possible. A lot of people would never have the audacity to plan for years, still keep working towards that goal of making it to the military. Another goal that I had was I wanted to be rich. When I was young, my grandmother worked in banking. She was high up in banks. So I used to ask her all kind of questions about interest rates and banking and bonds and stocks. Ever since I was a kid, I would just stand there and follow her around and drill her these questions because I loved learning. And I would make these files about like when I could retire, how much money I had to save, where to invest it. And I would bring her these spreadsheets and be like, Grandma, does this make sense? Does this make sense? And I mean, I'm probably under 13, when I'm doing this. And she's like, I've never met anybody that worries about retiring so much before you've ever even started working. It was the running joke. But I was just really interested. I loved the stuff. And I was like, I had all kind of different ideas of exactly how my life was going to work to get to that million, to be able to retire safely, and to do things a certain way. Then obviously my life completely derailed. But I don't know. I just wish that I think coming to the U.S., was a huge distraction. It wasn't until I was like 26 that I got back into computers, got back into those passions, started building up businesses, and became what I am today. For this big military piece and midlife, from like 17 to 25, I was just lost. I was just going on all over the U.S., just kind of messing up. It was just kind of a dark period of time where I forgot where I had come from, forgot my passions, and I was trying to reinvent myself from scratch. So I'm glad that in those, really it was more like 23 to 26 were those years that were just pretty crazy for me. But I ended up, being who I am today, so I'm happy and I value stability. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of these things, people are so brave. It's just like, you just work with what life gives you and you make the best of things. There's tons of people that have it worse than me. And I remember there's people all over the world that are stuck in a hospital or stuck in a wheelchair. You have to be glad of your situation and make the best of it. And in the end, life can just happen sometimes. I could be in a wheelchair tomorrow. I could be dead tomorrow. Making these videos is important to me. Living the life I'm living is important to me. So there's something when I'm gone. There's something, and I can say, okay, this is what my life has measured up to be. It's not all in vain. Not that it would be in vain anyway. But for me, it's always been important, trying to leave a mark in this world, trying to do something important. I know it's silly, probably, because I haven't really done that. But I'm still relatively young. I'm just now getting around to it. Like I said, my early 20s was just one big blur. So I'm working on it. I don't know. That was just a story, like I said. And I'll talk, if you guys want to hear more stories from my childhood, adolescence, I will talk about them. But from now on, I'll probably publish them on my other channel. So I'll leave a link in the description and first comment if you guys want to subscribe on the other channel. I'll keep on talking about random stuff and tell stories. While this channel will keep it more about crypto. I just wanted to give you guys a taste. It's Memorial Day. We'll just talk about some stuff. And I thought it was cool. I was telling a friend the story and you should talk about it in a video. And I'm like, is it that interesting? And I think it's like, well, maybe. The fact that I did have that surgery and everything and still pursued trying to make it in the military when everybody was like, you can't do that. You're not going to do it. You can't miss half your brain. Still think you're going to get through MEPS. My father was in the Navy, so he was very, very realistic about it. It's like, you're not going to make it, change what you want to do. But I didn't want to change it. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be like, this huge realization of like, oh, military, this is where I should be. And I think that's the thing with young people these days. We idolize things that they're just strange. And I don't know. Military is not, there's nothing heroic about it, to some extent, especially with what wars we're conducting now, with how we're living our lives. You really want to make a contribution. I would advise something to go in the Coast Guard, become a police officer, become a firefighter, do something This is going to change here. A lot of people nowadays get in the military just to sponge off the benefits. It's not really about protecting or serving. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Nothing against military people. I love the military. I still am very passionate about, the vehicles, the weapons, the lifestyle. It's just something that's always going to fascinate me. And I'm glad that I got involved in it enough to know what it's all about. But in the end, it just wasn't for me. I don't know if that makes any sense, It's just, it is what it is. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I don't want to make this video too long. If you have any questions, ask away. You want to hear any more stories, I will give them to you. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, buy red and sell green.